Today's podcast is brought to you by drinkers like you. To help support the show, visit patreon.com/haveadrinkshow.
We're going to talk about some of the best Scotch-style whiskeys in the world, Japanese whiskeys. Have we done some of this before? Sure. But we're better now and can ask the hard-hitting questions like, does Japan even have peat for this? Apparently so, but do they even use it? Join us as we're going to go through the history of this newer whiskey style. And if you want to drink along, maybe take out a second mortgage. Either way, we're going to have a drink.
Welcome to Have a Drink, the show where you learn along with us about what you drink. I'm Brittany Lee Walker.
I'm Justin Frazier.
I'm Christopher Walker.
And I'm Casey Price.
Oh, hey, everybody.
Howdy, y'all.
Howdy, y'all.
I was just kind of moving out of the way to show what we've been up to.
Are they? Yeah.
For the audio listeners, he's showing a cat stand with two small kittens plummeting to their deaths.
Yeah, pretty much. They got used to having like these dagger hook claws, and we clipped them today, and now they're having problems hanging on things.
Look, I just watched two of them hold hands and jump off the edge. They knew what this was.
Oh, so yeah, it's been a couple weeks since we last met for 3 hours to get sloshed on Japanese spirits.
Yeah,
Oh.
we're just staying in Japan lately.
Man. That just has me like keep thinking about maybe next year I'll get to go for my company. My boss is getting to go this year, and I'm like, God bless him.
Maybe
We're
next
gonna
year.
go one
that will
day.
be-
Yeah, one day.
Yeah, I don't think I think cats have been majority of what we've been up to.
What are the cats' names?
Jonesy and Karomi.
Okay.
Because our child couldn't be asked to name it because he'd name it Kiki. Because he names everything Kiki. We're out for a walk. He names the birds Kiki. Whatever. Oh, it's Kiki. Oh, okay. So we got an orange cat, and I was like, no one gets to name it. I'm naming it. Its name is Jonesy. Why is its name Jonesy, you ask? It's Ellen Ripley's cat. It was the second survivor of the Nostromo.
Game over, man.
That orange cat could survive a xenomorph.
I don't think it survived cryosleep, did it?
No,
You know, I don't remember now.
because wasn't it like the beginning of the?
It's just like gone.
Yeah.
The thing that hurt Ripley the most was the cat was dead. Also, all of her family was long dead, but the cat.
But yeah, such a span of time had passed. It's like, oh yeah, it's been like 800 years.
Yeah.
Like your entire, lineage is gone. Like there are no descendants or nothing. Doesn't matter. I think that's what I like about the Alien franchise. It's so bleak. It's just awful.
Oh God.
And then the other one's Kuromi because Brittany's heavily into Hello Kitty.
Me and him both, thank you. Because when I brought up the name, he was like,
I thought you were just really trying to pay homage to Kuramo of Queer Eye fame and I guess real world fame.
fair point. Did you say that Tan and his husband just had another child? I'm like,
I did not.
Yeah. It was so funny on
I don't follow them on the socials. I watch them when they have the shows.
Fair.
I barely follow you guys on the socials.
Scott was talking about, I think it was on Good Day Internet on DTNS, but he was like, because Tan and his husband live in Salt Lake City in Utah, like literally in Scott's area, and he said he saw them at the zoo, and he was like, that man is more. He doesn't. No one else deserves to be around. Like, he's so attractive. It's like,
It's just
why?
so handsome.
He was talking about Tan, obviously, but like he was like, why are you here? Like, the rest of us shouldn't be here. And it was just funny to hear him talk about it. He's like, it's just, he's so good looking. It's like, okay. But he said he saw them. He was like, oh yeah, they took their son to the zoo. And I'm like, okay, they're just out walking around.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's what people do with children. They take them to zoos. One of I still early memory of my childhood is I guess it's the Louisville Zoo. They have like the little dome thing that you go underground and you can pop your head up into like a little prairie dog style thing.
Oh yeah.
Like I still remember doing that as a child, and I had to been like 5 or younger. I saw those things like not several years back, but probably like 2 decades later. It's like, oh wow, either they don't clean those anymore, or I just imagined as a child that I could see things, or I have glaucoma. I'm not sure which.
The whole world was pristine at one time.
At one time, yes. And it's been quite a while since anybody's cleaned dick all. And my floors are horrendous. It appears having 2 cats not good for the cleanliness of the floors.
But also, like, we've basically had babies again because I
Oh,
told
yeah.
him like
Everywhere.
every 10 minutes, I'm like, what is that? Where did you get that? Get that out of your mouth.
Yeah, except that doesn't go away. You just have pets now. You just constantly have toddlers.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, they're cats. They'll eventually get to a point to where they don't want to do anything. They just want to like lay. And there's like, leave me alone.
I mean, not if you fix them fast enough.
Oh, we're getting as soon as possible because they're male and female. So we're like, when is it advisable? How early? And
They're siblings, but also it's like, but kittens don't understand, like cats don't understand genetics.
they're like 6 months. I'm like, cool. In 4 months, we're marking the calendar that we're
British
setting
Royal.
up.
Cats are well, animals are like the British royal family. They don't understand you have to spread the genes apart. There's your Eddie Izzard for your bingo cards, everyone.
I'm telling you, I'm making a graphic for that.
Susie Izzard.
I just
Didn't take
wish
long.
that, like, yeah. I know, it's pretty soon.
All right. Bob, what have you been up to?
Nothing. Casey, how about you?
Nothing. Moving on.
Yeah.
All right. Boring
It's-
couple weeks.
Yeah, look, all it's been at work is just we've had people out one week after another, so it's just been head down, blinders on, get the job done. So there's literally been nothing going on in my life.
Face down, rump up.
That's
The way
That's
I
the
like
way I
to
like to
balance
get-
accounts.
that's the way I like to get work done.
Yeah.
It helps my lower back to exercise it that way.
Your neck, your lower back.
No, my spine popped in the beginning of this episode, and I was pretty sure I couldn't feel my feet for a few minutes.
I would
Good time.
kill for that.
Just like, oh god, I don't know if I can get to the microphone.
Jesus.
How
I'm trying these new nuts.
about these nuts? All
Oh.
right.
They're
What
the flavored almonds.
Yeah, they are. Oh,
oh. Flavor of
Mexican
what?
street corn.
Oh,
Ooh.
A little
might-
weird.
that sounds like it would taste good, but almonds are too much work to like chew. They're too hard of a nut. My favorites are like walnuts or like pecans, where it's just like practically, they're practically chew themselves.
They're old man nuts.
Yes,
I
I
think
learned to eat nuts from my grandfather, cracking walnuts out in his yard. What do you want from me?
I'm a rather big fan of just honey roasted peanuts. I mean,
Peanuts also good.
Not bad.
Cashews also good.
I feel like these need more lime to them. They need more tanginess. More food
yeah.
needs tanginess.
It's true.
My problem with cashews, you can't really eat too. Well, I guess it's a good thing because you can't eat too many in one sitting because it really wears on you quick. You're just like, man, these are just like too rich and kind of like oily and just
You say that, I'll buy whole tins and just where'd the tin go?
Some pistachios.
Pistachio.
New
The next
podcast, guys.
one.
Have a nut. Wait, no,
Seven
that name's not gonna fly.
7 episodes in, and we're out of content.
Anyways. Yeah. Do macadamia
Start
nut.
arguing about legumes.
God. The Mexican street corn thing. We got the dip from Costco, a Mexican street corn dip. I
Really, they
love.
make a Mexican street corn chewing tobacco.
You.
I hear dip. That's the first thing I think of.
That's unfortunate. First,
Where did we grow up?
I know.
We also have to confront the amazingness of the Costco quesadillas.
Oh my God.
Oh man, we've been throwing them bad boys in the old cast iron. Oh, so good.
I was thinking it was like a Costco hot dog situation, but you mean literally like a bulk box of.
No,
Yeah,
they
it's
make
like-
them. It's not a thing that you buy in like the freezer section or something.
It's a pre-prepared meal, but it's not. They're not frozen or something.
Mm-hmm.
Because like every store, even Costco, has the thing where they make the whatever meals are, and a lot of the Costco ones are amazing.
Costco though,
They
it's
are
like
really.
Jurassic, it's like Jurassic Park because they've got the big glass thing and you can see them back there making them, like preparing them. But no, it's great. They like throw it in the cast iron and like get them nice and crisp on one side. Oh,
Pretty tasty.
all right.
I will say the highlight of my week was watching a video of someone showing that you could poach hot dogs before you grill them using beer, and I went, "Game has changed, gentlemen.
Listen,
So
I want to try this at the very least."
I think we did it wrong, but we tried that at my mom's house once, and I couldn't really tell the difference.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's because my brother buys really cheap hot dogs.
It could be a hot dog and a beer situation. You might have to find like the right
Mm-hmm.
The right pair.
ones for this. Anyway, all right. On to the episode.
This week in food.
We're not that drunk. Cheeky bastards! We're not that drunk! We're not that drunk! We're not that drunk!
Fingers
whiskey.
crossed.
So give it time. It'll get to us all.
It's like I got some water right here in our fabulous have a drink water cup water bottle. That's what they're called. Not a cup, it seals.
I'll be getting my Hello Kitty one next weekend.
You can taste the merchandising. No, let's we're gonna go into some Japanese whiskey things. Start with a little note. Japanese whiskey, if you're trying to spell it at home, folks, should not have an E. Why? Because they're trying to make Scotch. Whiskey with an E is Irish. Whiskey without, Scottish. America kind of goes both ways. Mostly it tends towards E. Canada does the same, but you'll have different traditions. Some of that links back to the tradition that it's coming from. Some of it's just how they felt like spelling it. But if you're trying to do it in Japan, leave out the E. Treat it like it's Scotch. Should be a theme, I think, for a big part of this episode.
Yeah.
All right. Well, historically speaking, whiskey is as American as apple pie, which is to say we co-opted it from a rich, long-standing tradition. But we definitely can say that America brought whiskey to Japan, whether they wanted to or not. This is one of the best openings we've ever had, Chris.
Thank you.
Anyway, in July 1853, not as old as some of our other, not as far back as some of our other episodes, but that year's significant. What happened in that year? I guess we'll figure out as we keep reading. July 1853, U.S. naval vessels showed up in Tokyo Bay and forced the country open after a more than 200 period of self-imposed isolation. Right, Commodore Perry. Americans brought casks of the stuff, as well as other presents to show off Yankee know-how, such as miniature steam trains, an early camera, and the telegraph.
I like to think miniature steam train was literally them, like it was. It was like the landing at Normandy, and the front of the boat opened, and here comes Walt Disney riding a tiny little steam train out of it onto the shore. Toot toot.
While the sailors on the boat are singing "It's a Small World."
Pretty much.
It is now. We're bringing American imperialism everywhere we go. That's why they accept American Express in Japan.
Can I just say I found...
I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just making that up off my...
It's everywhere you want to be.
I Facebook, the algorithm knows me, and I'm already getting ads for 4th of July shirts from some company. I can't even remember the name of it. And it's just got Thomas Jefferson on it. It says, I brought those bitches freedom. Bitches love freedom. So I was like, how did you know I want that shirt? Glorious.
They did want freedom. He was not the one to give it to them, though. Anyway, but yeah, so they bring in the steam train, early camera, and a telegraph. Over the course of the following century, Japan would master all three of these, producing world-class trains, cameras, and communication systems. Now, Japanese whiskey is considered one of the world's 5 classic whiskeys, joining the likes of Scotch, Irish, Canadian, and American. It's funny when they say that, because I'm like, oh yeah, the 5 traditional whiskeys, right? 2 of them are very traditional. 2 of them are, look, they're here, they're trying, they're doing their best, and they've done a good job. And then Japan going, let's play some catch up.
It's just, I don't think I get into it in the history in this one, but it's just so weird of how they were isolationist, but they never developed whiskey on their own. They have the completely own distinct spirits, which is great. And in the book, it's like half the book is them going, let's have an aside and talk about a lot of these. Well, we've done whole episodes on a lot of that.
Well, there's also Japan is in the orbit of China in that area in terms of like culture. Chinese culture permeates most of Southeast Asia. They're not making whiskey. They're making they're doing everything with rice. So everyone else does everything with rice. So that's part of it. If it's your main grain that you're using, you're probably not making whiskey out of rice. So to give some context of why Commodore Perry decided to kick down the door like he was John Cena, God, that joke's old even now. 1630s, Japan had kicked out the Portuguese missionaries and instituted the isolationist policy known as Sakoku, or locked country, limiting international trade to the Dutch, Koreans, and Chinese. This is during the Tokugawa shogunate. And I can go into a very long aside here if I don't.
So to say, like, that's exactly what we were just saying. Like in the 1630s, they stopped with everyone except for those 3 groups. And it's like, so none of those 3 groups are huge into whiskey. So yeah, they have very little exposure to it.
It's also going to be fun because the height of technology they had at that time is the old, not even like the flintlock, like the match muskets, like you light an actual fuse that when you pull the trigger, it drops down into a flash pan to fire a ball of a musket ball. And they keep that level of technology using swords and whatnot until 1853.
Yeah.
There's a great quote I had read somewhere. This is not in the thing, but there was an American who was like American ambassador or something like that. He had described it later saying, I remember the Middle Ages because that is kind of what they were when they got there at first. Wow. But yeah, speaking of, Commodore Matthew Perry of the U.S. Navy had been tasked with bringing the Japanese barrels and barrels of freedom. I was waiting to see if Brittany had like a freedom sounder.
If only.
Yeah, I need to get that. Yeah.
It's fine.
We'll get on that.
We can always just chant USA.
USA, USA.
You.
USA chants real hard to do over video call.
Yeah.
It's hard to coordinate.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, Commodore Perry wanted to force open the country to diplomatic relations and trade with America because it's their time to kind of get into Asia. They're like, we're an up and coming country. We need rights in here. Everyone's busy in China. What if we take Japan? We won't take over. That's crass and old-fashioned thinking. No, we'll cripple them financially and make them subservient to us in that manner. Japan did not agree.
You don't say.
I mean, they agreed to open up trade, but some choices had to be made. Japanese called American ships kurofune, or black ships. And even today, the term is used to describe as something coming from the outside to shake things up. They were still using sails as their primary method of like ship travel.
And we went there in steamships.
Mm-hmm.
Just be like, hey.
I mean, this 1853. This is just before the Civil War. We probably still would have had sail ships that are the same kind, but I think they had some like steamers at this point.
I would say the majority of the fleet at this point, I believe, were still sailed ships, but they did have steamships, and that's specifically what they sent. Were 4 steamers just to come out with that BDE.
Yeah, this whole excursion, gunboat diplomacy is just diplomatic big BDE.
Yeah.
It is walking around like you're James T. Kirk. Anyway, when warnings to turn back were unheeded, warnings from Japan telling them, "No, turn away. We're not accepting guests." Japan pretty much did not have much choice but to relent because they couldn't do anything to those ships.
Because giant iron steamers rolling in.
They went,
stop us.
It's like, well, it's fine. It's not like they can kill all of us. Oh, they can. All of us very quickly? Oh. In the days that followed, samurais boarded Commodore Perry's steam frigate to begin talks. The Americans, with their manifest destiny and their gunboat diplomacy, were unwelcome guests. But aboard their ships, they did what any proper host would do, and they served them refreshments. They're not rude. They're just here to forcibly cause you to open up diplomatic trade. Well, from the in this case, it was American whiskey, and from the sound of it, the distilled drink was a hit. According to the official U.S. report, at least the samurai bureaucrats seemed to relish in the Western spirit, mixing it with sugar and guzzling it and guzzling plentiful drafts. Putting sugar in is a bit much. I mean, I guess if you're doing it in a cocktail, but
that seems to stick with like for most of the history of whiskey in Japan. They just were not okay with just plain straight whiskey. It had to have mixers and things in it.
I do like the idea that I had a note I made in this earlier that was just like, yeah, Commodore Perry did not care whether he was an unwelcome guest. He had the guns. As the century progressed, more and more whiskey arrived in Japan. I'm doing everything I can to avoid going into a long discussion about the Meiji or Meiji Restoration and the fascinating period of history that is prior to this period of Japan up until essentially World War I, even World War II. It is really interesting to see how quickly they go from using swords to being one of the top like industrial powers in the world. Part of that is going to inform some of this episode, but I'll try to hold back a bit.
Well, when you skip a lot of the experimental stages, and just dive into what everyone's like, oh no, we like this part of the tree leads you to nothing, but if you take this tree.
We'll talk about a guy later where essentially like I'll go ahead and say part of the plan for Japan to modernize, which was like after they made a new government, they went, we are going to modernize this country. How do we do that? We send our smartest people to every country that does something the best in the world. So yeah, they send English. They send people to the English to learn the Navy. They send people to Germany for a lot of science stuff. They like literally just send out as many people as you can, from being an isolationist country to being like, send the people out. They have to learn this stuff and get over there and pick up what they can fast. Because they had they looked at the world and they went, it's eat or be eaten.
Yeah.
Those are the terms that they saw colonialism. And they're looking at China, who is having a rough go of it, as England is going, would you like some opium? No, we would like to not have that. Too bad. We're going to be taking it. We like you high and easy to influence.
Yeah.
All right. So as the trip progressed, more and more whiskey arrived in Japan, although it remained largely for expatriate consumption, because they also brought a lot of people from abroad into Japan to learn things. Welcome to the plot of The Last Samurai.
Yeah, pretty much.
By the early 1860s, the first Western-style bar opened in Yokohama, advertising that it served bourbon, Irish whiskey, and Scotch whiskey. It's my kind of bar. Can I be an American expat in Japan in the 1860s? They're pretty heavy on like cleaning. Like honestly, that might be one of the best places to be. Like, you know, the past is gross. They are one of the least gross areas. Sorry, what were you about to say, Casey?
We've got all the whiskeys.
It's true. We do have those now. But
No,
from a
no,
historical
I mean-
perspective. Oh, we got all the. We got
It's like
both kinds.
country and western.
Mm-hmm. Irish and Scotch. Well, and bourbon. Honestly, I don't know what else you need. I guess you might want to rye from time to time, but. Sorry, I'm now just picturing like you walk over with your. I don't know. Let's assume they have sushi takeout back then. You sit down at this bar and you're eating sushi and drinking bourbon. It's the life I want. I can have that life now, honestly, but
That's not the point.
it's not the point. Anyway, around the same time, according to a German traveler named Margaretha Wepner, that port city was filled with foreign seamen drunk on whiskey and the lowest state of depravity and degradation, as she clutched her pearls.
Yeah.
Which sounds about right, honestly. I mean, sailors. What you gonna do?
Yeah.
Imports like this were not aimed at locals, but at the country's expatriate community. At the time, whiskey was still a foreign drink. This, however, would change. The Japanese drink business would evolve rapidly during the 1800s. We're going to get into some of that in the sake, upcoming sake episodes during later ones we'll do on that, because a lot of stuff changes very quickly during this period. With companies starting to distill alcohol with them newfangled column stills. Denebe Kamiya, who set up his own liquor shop in 1880, imported one from Germany and used it to produce sochu, which is traditionally distilled in a simple still. This new style of sochu is reportedly served in his Tokyo night spot, the Kamiya Bar, in 1899, which specialized in foreign drinks and remains in business well over 100 years later. That's cool.
Yeah.
I would love to go somewhere like that.
You know what? By the way, I take back my thought about wanting to live in Japan during this period. Their government is balls to the wall insane, and they are described from like 1899 to like 1920, 1930. They are described as a government by assassination. Because they're just getting a handle on, like, they're starting to put out like a parliament and having like legislatures and trying to figure out how to do democracy while having a pretty much while having, an emperor that they have just recently deified.
Ah,
Yeah,
sure.
there's a lot going on, but also people who within 20 years, people are getting bombed for political opinions, and you're like,
Mm.
okay, the world is strange. But yeah, this contribution to column still distillation in Japan did lay the groundwork for Japan to distill Western spirits, even if real whiskey making was nowhere to be seen. Look, once you get the column still, you can crank out whatever you need, and you're like, okay, I'll make this work.
You can do it efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I got some real crackhead energy coming out from behind me here.
Waiting for those cats just to descend onto your head.
Oh no, they're under the couch, and one of them's screaming, and I'm like, do I intervene? All right. Perhaps because some of the most influential foreigners in Japanese history were Scots, most notably Thomas Blake Glover, aka the Scottish Samurai, arriving in 1859. A then 21-year-old Glover was an agent for the Hong Kong trading company Jardine Matheson and Company, sent to Japan to purchase green tea, but who ended up running guns for samurai rebels.
Yeah.
What happens?
Incidentally, the firm's co-founder, Alexander Matheson, used money he made from selling cotton, tea, and opium to found the Dalmore distillery in the Scottish Highlands in 1839.
Nice.
Yeah. That's also samurai rebels again. Would you like to? We'll bring out Exhibit A, The Last Samurai.
Yeah. So, among his numerous accomplishments, Glover oversaw the construction of the country's first modern coal mine, invested in what would become Kirin Brewery, and was instrumental in the early days of Mitsubishi.
Wow.
Japan, especially during this period, is big on actual monopolies. They're like, yeah, fine. One company does everything. I do not care anymore. We don't have to worry about it. They will make sure they're doing it properly. How do we make sure we're competitive and they're striving to do the best? They either strive to do the best or we kill them.
Yes.
Well, not was that bad of a murder rap, but they were in the midst of reorganizing the country to have a mythological samurai work ethos that didn't actually exist, which is what leads to fanatical devotion, let's say. And also, I had to remind myself, if Kirin was one of the breweries that we were like, oh no, they're bad people, and I was like, they're probably not great people, but they're not the ones I was thinking of.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking of war criminals.
Yeah. That's the Malaysian joint.
Yeah.
All right. So perhaps it was because in the late 19th century, Scottish engineering and scientific innovation were world class. Japan established close ties with Scottish academia during the Iwakara mission from 1871 to 73, which, as Bob was telling us about earlier, that was them going out to all the countries who do things the best and saying, give us this technology.
Teach us your ways. Yeah, I find that period very fascinating, of just an entire government deciding, it's an entire government playing civilization, going, all right, what are we focusing on? Science.
Yeah. All right. With the elites in the ensuing years going to Glasgow to study, while in Scotland, some students no doubt developed a taste for Scotch whiskey.
There's no way they couldn't.
When Masataka Takasuru, am I getting that?
That sounds right.
Went to Scotland, there was an established tradition of his country's best and brightest going to the United Kingdom. While his visa might have said he was in Scotland as a chemistry student, he was there for another purpose, to study Western booze. But isn't that why we all go to Scotland?
I was going to say, chemistry student in Scotland just means potential distiller.
Yeah.
Look, he got around in a time when many Japanese had never seen a foreigner. Takatsuru grew up studying English. Then a rare skill for his fellow countrymen, and one that would help him as a young man trying to learn how the Scots made their whiskey. In many ways, the cosmopolitan Takasuru was a forerunner of the Mobo, 1920s Japanese slang for modern boy. Without his worldly interest and language ability, Takatsuru would have had an even tougher time during his travels that kicked off in July 1918. It's a bit of a time jump here. When he boarded a ship in nearby Kobe, leaving for California, made a little stop on his way to Scotland, where he'd check out American winemaking before making his way to Glasgow, Scotland.
It's not during that time period, but I'm just picturing the what was the winery? It's not Kendall Jackson. It's
Mondavi?
Mondavi. And I'm just picturing like he walks like, oh, look at these wonderful vineyards, and he just sees a mother slap her adult son. I should leave.
Yeah, he sees some Mondavi stuff going down, and he's like, "I'm gonna go."
Is it like Fraggle Rock, the traveler Fraggle
Yeah.
Yes.
running home?
Yep. Oh god. So Takatsuru took internships at distilleries such as Longmorn, Bowness in the Lowlands region, and Hazelburn in Campbelltown. Like he got around to all like pointedly got internships at like all the different Scotch regions.
I was also gonna say like, man made some good choices.
So he knew it was up.
He did, and they all pretty much knew what he was up to.
During here Campbelltown too, I'm just picturing him going, "Yar, taste of the sea."
During these apprenticeships, it's highly unlikely that anyone thought they were teaching a future rival.
Oh,
but
sure
also,
not. They were racist.
Yeah, in the book, they also it goes on. It's like they also didn't care because they know how much like he may have the exact chemistry and know the exact process. He does not like the place makes up a lot of it.
The water does it. The peat, the earth,
The climate.
There's
so much. They knew he could take everything they do and go back to Japan, and he could not replicate what they produce.
Right.
And they were 100% right. But by God, could he get close? So, speaking of which, Takatsura returned to Osaka in the fall of 1920 with a new bride, Rita Cohen. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, we've talked about this before, haven't we? Haven't we talked about this before?
Mm-hmm. But also, I'm just like, wow, that's a hell of a thing to declare in customs. Anything you've brought back in your travels? A wife.
We're going to need some more paperwork.
Yeah. Scottish wife. Oh, we're going to need even more paperwork. Whom he had met in Scotland. He was ready to make proper whiskey, but poor economic conditions had convinced Setsu Shuzo not to distill the real deal. So it should be Takatsuru was making, before he went, he was already making cheap knockoff whiskey or liquor that was meant to look like whiskey, but actually appeal to the Japanese tastes. And that's what like his employers were like, no, go learn to make the real stuff. And he comes back and they're like, that's too expensive. Keep doing what you were doing. Takatsuru was back in the lab concocting bogus stuff until 1922 when he quit the company that had sent him to Scotland, because again, he now knows how, and he knows what the real thing is and tastes like. And he's like, I can't keep doing this.
Look, he had to pay bills for a while, but at a certain point, he's like, I can't keep living like this. It's a lie.
Exactly.
So a man who owns a fried chicken place makes him start brewing whiskey down underneath, right? He makes his blue whiskeys.
Exactly. The following year, he got a job at another Osaka drinks outfit, Kotobukiya. Kotobukiya? I don't know. Which translates as happiness house.
Yeah, it is.
Today, that company is Suntory.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is.
Still correct.
The founder of Kotobukiya, Shinjiro Tori, that name might seem familiar.
Oh, Tori, huh?
had become a very rich man from the sale of Akadama port wine, a fortified wine he blended and released in 1907 to suit Japanese tastes. He thought whiskey was going to be the next big thing and dreamed of distilling it in Japan. To do so, he hired the best people he could find, including Masataka Tekasuru. I wish there was some way I could have shortened that, but no. I'm pretty sure that'd be taken as like disrespect, and I would never try to disrespect this man.
Takatsuru-san.
To set up and manage the country's first proper distillery. And they're like the tales of how they set up the first two distilleries, proper distilleries in Japan for whiskey. One of them actually being called Yamazaki, which is where we got the name from. And I'm pretty sure if you go back to our Suntory episode, we go all about this. You can get the whole story about it, I think. I'm not for certain.
That was over 100 episodes ago.
And yeah,
or maybe it was 100 episodes. I don't know. It was a long time back.
No one was alive back then.
Number 2.
All right. But Takatsuru, however, would not stay with the company. After the failure of Shirofuda, the country's first real whiskey, which came out of that Yamazaki distillery, he found himself running a Kotobukiya beer brewery outside Yokohama. But he hadn't traveled all the way to Scotland to learn how beer was made. And after his 10-year Kotobukiya contract was up, he struck out on his own, establishing his own company, De Nippon Kaju, Great Japan Fruit Juice, later shortened to Nika. Bum, bum, bum.
Mm-hmm.
I just love that the shoe drop on that whole thing when he's like, "Nah, dog." And when it came to history, there's a ton more stuff that happens after that, because again, we only made it to, I don't even think I slapped a year on that, but we're like maybe the 1930s.
Yeah,
that's where we stopped the history portion of that, because it does start to get a little, more modern with it, and it gets crazy, and you can't keep up with the number of amazing distilleries that start springing up in Japan. But just like right there, that leads us. I love the cliffhanger of it, because we just established Suntory, and then we have Nika, and it's like those are the two biggest. And Nika only spawned because Suntory couldn't keep him happy, and
yeah. Despite being Happiness House,
I mean, they're producing liquid happiness.
Sorry, I got distracted because I was looking up the Japanese honorifics thing.
Yeah, dude. I was just saying it should have been Sama. Put some real stank on that respect.
This is saying that Sama is used in mostly business and clientele context.
It's, from what I remember and understand, it's supposed to be like the one of the higher honorifics you can actually use, but it's meant to be like someone who is like, it was what they would used to use for like lords.
Okay.
Like it is like an extra high honor, where like San is your like Mr. and Mrs. roughly.
Yeah.
It's not actually that, but yeah.
Somewhat equivalent, yeah. I just at work, I'm so used to everybody saying like the CEO that we always say.
You would say whatever.
Son. Yeah. Anyway, that's not important. So how it's made
important, just not necessarily to this episode.
Well, okay, sure. So not all Japanese whiskey makers think the same.
Who is it that thinks different? Like that's the actual brand. Like logo. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like who's got a drunk Japanese Steve Wozniak out there?
That'd be awesome.
Another brief aside, in that book they brought up.
Nika has that, I guess.
Never mind.
Okay.
Whiskey brain. I had a thought. I was like, "Ooh, there's this entertaining thing," and then suddenly I was like, "No, you just poured yourself another drink. You need to drink it."
Just poured yourself a drink. It's gone now. There's only one thought now. Why is that not inside me?
Yeah.
Anywho, so there's no singular Japanese whiskey making process per se, because there are variations among the distilleries and different approaches, much like everywhere else in the world. So the Japanese style is generally compared to Scotch. the whiskey upon which it was based. While both use similar production processes and equipment, Japan throws in a few unique twists, because that's what they do. As in Scotland, Japan makes malt whiskey from malted barley. Whole grain whiskey is made from corn, rye, and wheat. A bit of malted barley is also added in grain whiskey production to help convert starch into sugar. Traditionally, barley is malted by hand. It's soaked in water and spread out on a malting floor, then turned by shovel. This basically tricks the barley grains into thinking it's spring and they start to sprout, releasing enzymes.
Springtime for barley and malting.
Yes. Releasing enzymes that aid in turning starches into fermented sugars or fermentable sugars. To stop the sprouts, the barley is dried by either hot air for unpeated whiskey or with peat smoke for peated whiskey, the good stuff. Those tiny particles glom onto the barley and then carry over those distinctive notes through distillation. These days, however, most barley is malted by industrial machines, which is kind of a womp-womp after all that.
I mean, I feel like there's probably somewhere out there that's going like, nope. Like, what you doing today? Shoveling the malt, boss. Shovel that malt.
Out there turning the malts.
Turn the malt, boss. Turn the malt, Luke.
There's always that place. So a brief aside on Japanese peat and barley. Should we put peat in quotes at this point, or is it
Probably put Japanese in quotes.
Well, so for many decades, Japanese whiskey was made from Japanese barley. Until the early 2000s, the Japan Spirits and Liquors Makers Association agreed to use a certain percentage of domestic barley in whiskey production. But as the whiskey market was skidding towards rock bottom, that agreement was changed in 2004 to allow the Brewers Association of Japan to meet that percentage. Nikka, for example, doesn't make beer, but is owned by Asahi, which, according to Nikka's chief blender, Tadashi Sakuma, took over that obligation.
Today I learned Asahi owns Nikka.
See, when I think of Asahi, I'm thinking of a beer that's been duct taped to my hand while we're duct taping a coffee table, Casey.
Because Edward 40 Hands.
It's a pretty coffee table.
It is. Still zebra striped to this day.
Oh, yeah.
As God intended.
So traditionally, the amount of domestic barley is, or that the Brewers Association buys the verbal promise because drawing up a formal contract would violate global trade regulations.
Yeah.
Sure. In the years before World War II and the decades that followed, the most common type of two-row barley found at Japanese distilleries was golden melon, which first came to Japan in the late 19th century. Former Civil War cavalry officer and U.S. Agricultural Commissioner Horace Capron.
Which side of the Civil War, Chris?
I can't tell you. You'd have to go look that up.
Oh. Well, he arrived in Japan in 1870, and as an
I can't imagine the U.S.
toy?
would be sending someone who fought for the Confederacy out on a job like this.
Right.
I mean, they sent the Confederate general to run the Spanish-American War. So,
Facts.
So they.
This is how you get rid of people you don't want sticking around to have.
Yeah, that's not, I said it, and I thought, like, you kind of want to get them away, like as far away as possible.
Yeah.
Union officer.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Union.
He served as Secretary of Agriculture under Andrew Johnson and Ulysses S. Grant.
Maybe he was a dick and pissed off Grant. Grant's like, no, you go to Japan.
He's like, oh, it's wonderful to work for you again, Mr. Grant. General or president, I don't care which, but you're going to Japan.
He got into Grant's personal whiskey stash. Grant caught him in the middle of it, and he's like, you're going somewhere where they don't have whiskey. Get out of my sight.
We're making you an ambassador. That seems to be the biggest slap in the face for any political career.
You're going to be an ambassador.
It's It's that episode of West Wing, though, where like they have to get rid of someone from one department, and to do so, they have to just shuffle the ambassadors up one to get this guy into somewhere else, like into like Micronesia. It's like, you go to the Federated States of Micronesia. Why? Because I do, because I don't want to have to deal with you, and I need to like free up the space so I can get this other thing I need done. What are you going to do with the current ambassador to Micronesia? Oh, he's cheating on his wife, who's a friend of mine. So we're tossing him. We're tossing his ass out the door.
Yeah. Okay. So that guy, Horace, arrived in Japan in 1870 as an Oyatoi Gaikokujin, basically a hired foreign advisor, as we said, to develop.
So there's
Hokkaido.
a I don't want to say it's, well, I don't know if it's rude or not, but there's a term that they refer to, non-Japanese people, at least. I don't know how specific the term is, but it's like gaijin. And so I was like, gaikujin. I was like, okay, yeah, no, I can see the root of how this word got here.
Yeah. I always, like some of the time on these, I'm just like, I hope we're not saying anything like derogatory by accident.
That's the thing. Like I'm saying, like I think it might be derogatory towards us that they say, and I'm not certain.
If it's toward white people, that's whatever. I mean,
we deserve it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So besides introducing new livestock and working on Sapporo's urban planning, he imported seeds from America, including barley varieties, to suit Hokkaido's soil. That they did. The agricultural knowledge led to the birth of the Japanese beer industry, with the Sapporo Brewery setting up shop in 1876.
A lot. I love these episodes where it's just like there's just so many background things. You're like, holy crap.
Just part of the background bit of this is, Sapporo was also founded. Also, Sapporo is much older than I thought it was.
Yeah, really. The flavorful golden melon flourished first in the Japanese beer industry and later in the country's whiskey business. The Chichibu distillery in Saitama has come into possession of golden melon seeds and is running tests to see if it's possible to use the variety in a future release. Says Chichibu distillery founder Ikiro Akuto. It's hard to say how it will influence the flavor, but I'm curious to find out and taste it. That's a whiskey person right there. Peat can give whiskey a phenolic and smoky vegetation flavor. In Japan, in Japan, distilleries order their malted barley already peated, specifying the parts per million of peat phenols that they want. Some distilleries go one step further, mixing peated and unpeated barley to suit their exact needs. In the 1970s, moved a bit further in time there, English language journalists incorrectly stated that Japan doesn't have peat, with The Guardian writing on November 12th, 1977, that, quote, without the Scottish peat, the Japanese would be lost. Strong statement there. Local peat's prospects weren't helped by Suntory advertisements in American newspapers stating that its whiskeys were made with Scottish imports.
They literally advertised it.
I mean,
well, if you want your whiskey to feel like it's from Scotland, you should tell them that they're using Scottish ingredients.
Yeah. That's fair. But as with barley, Japan does have its own peat, which can be found all over the country. Due to the World War II fuel shortages. What? Oh.
I was just going to say, that blows my mind. I thought peat only existed in Scotland.
Yeah.
So they're weird bogs.
It just takes a low oxygen, high acid content in the soil.
Well, apparently Japan used it as an energy source.
That's so does Scotland.
So does Scotland. So does all the UK. Anywhere it has it, at one point in time, they burned that.
Well, today the country's largest island, Hokkaido, is peat central. 6% of the prefecture's flatland is covered in it. Until recently, workers at Nikka's Yoichi distillery still dug up local peat every year to use for demonstration purposes. Next in the process, the malt is milled and steeped in hot water.
Real quick, going back to the sorry, I just had to throw this in there, but like the barley and the peat. Again, Japan, the islands, not very huge. And when you think about agriculture, beer, and all the other distilleries, and like everyone competing for the stuff there, it is literally cheaper just to ship it in from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So that's what most of them do.
I mean, for context, Japan's roughly the size of California with like twice the population and 2/3 of the habitable landmass. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, next in the process, the malt is milled and steeped in hot water, breaking down the grain starches and creating a sugary liquid called wort.
Wort.
We're very familiar with the wort.
Yeah. Combined with yeast, the mixture ferments for around 3 days. Yeast gobbles up the sugars, producing an unhopped beer called wash. That's between 5 and 10% alcohol.
By the way, real quick, why are there so many things that are I'm just saying, why this is gonna sound really gross and really bad. You have warts and you have yeast, which can get infected.
Yeah.
I'm just like, there's a lot of like bad terms in this.
Oh yeah.
That I'm just always like, why did we choose these words? Could we not have chosen
and mash?
Da 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 da.
Because English is so
Yeah. Sorry. Just dumb jokes my brain was running through, and I needed to get it out before I lost my mind.
So
Continue.
wort.
Oh, sorry.
Wort just means plant in Old English, but there's
what happens when you have like 7 words.
Yeah, there is another version, or it evolves later on into root, and so warts on the body, you're getting roots basically into the body with those, and then root being the basis of alcohol.
I was going to say it is the root of what you're talking. Yeah. Okay. That etymologically still doesn't quite right, but we're going to move on. That seems about right.
I was just about to say I love etymology. Yeah. So the default preference in Japan is to get the wort as clear as possible by filtering liquid wort from the mash's solid bits, resulting in a wash that is fragrant and fruity and floral aromas for which Japanese whiskey is famous. Some Scottish distilleries also use a clear wort, but many prefer a cloudy one as it results in nuttier scents from compounds known as lactones.
I saw them once back in, I think there's a doo-wop group, right?
Yes.
The lactones.
While the preference is for clear wort, if necessary, Japanese distilleries do produce cloudy wort to make whiskey.
The lactones couldn't carry a tune in a milk carton.
I was going to say, they feel like they're a Wisconsin doo-wop group, right?
Oh, man.
It's going.
There you go.
Right. It's the gift that keeps giving.
There's so many layers. Well, let's talk about yeast, since we've talked about wort.
Let's infect my mind with this yeast knowledge.
Let's go deep dive on yeast here. To make alcohol, you need yeast, at least today. Who knows what'll happen 10 years from now with the way things are going. You may be able to. Currently, they may have already transported the genes using CRISPR from a yeast cell into a dog, and now to make beer, all you need is a dog's digestive tract.
No. This is Chicha all over again, and I won't stand for it.
They say he's just crying. He's like, "Don't give Calgione any more ideas."
I'm not drinking beer that came out of a dog's anus.
Did you see it? I think it was like last week. Calgione just tweeted a picture of a big sack of blue corn.
That's how you make blue waffles.
I'm done.
Speaking of warts, it's necessary for fermentation and feeds on the sugary wort, producing alcohol and natural aromatic, fruity smelling chemical compounds called esters. For Scotch whiskey, there have traditionally been two kinds of yeast, a distiller's and a brewer's yeast. Less importance is placed on the individual yeast types because most Scottish distilleries use the same strain of industrial, mass produced distiller's yeast, aiming for a high alcoholic yield.
Now that I'm back and have recovered from any discussions about beer which shall not be named, the how much do you want to bet? I'm just wondering, like the one Japanese guy that was in Scotland, I just wonder if he was like just leaving going, I'm gonna take some of this yeast too. It's mine. Yoink.
Yeah.
Pulling a New Belgium there, where it's just like, nah, I got this. I got what I need.
That's exactly what I thought. So when they send the chemist to Scotland, it was the exact same as that bike trip through Belgium. I was like, no, he just went place to place, just stealing a little bit of what everyone did.
What you do?
I have a thought, but I want to read what's been written here first, just to make sure that it's not mentioned before I fill in anything. Japanese distillers, however, use an array of different yeasts to bring out specific aromas. Nika uses several different yeasts, and while not confirming exactly how many, the makers said it has fewer than 10 different kinds specifically for whiskey.
It's
Centauri-
5. It's 5 yeasts. You've got a red yeast, a blue yeast, a yellow yeast, a green yeast, and a black yeast, which forms the head.
No
Went
pink
real
yeast.
deep for a Voltron joke.
Where are we going here? Okay.
I was thinking Power Rangers, and then you went
Well, it's because
green with the original. I was like, oh,
nope. I was going Voltron, which admittedly is Power Rangers is a Voltron.
yeah.
Voltron and Sentai merged together. Let's not get me down a rabbit. Like, we're already talking about Japanese things. Let's not get me down a rabbit hole about Power Rangers.
You started this. Really.
Centauri has around 150 varieties of yeast. Kirin also has hundreds of unique strains. Each distillery can select the optimal strains to create certain aromas and then carry through to the final whiskey. In this regard, Japanese whiskey makers are similar to America's bourbon distillers, who likewise emphasize the importance of unique yeast strains. Japanese whiskey makers like Nika, Mars Whiskey, and Igashima Shuzo also create pure concentrated yeast starters called shubo, a technique from sake production.
I was going to say, we just talked about Shubo. Also, 150 yeasts would be 30 Voltrons of
It's a lot of yeastrons.
yeastrons.
The Shubo thing, the book also, we'll give a shout out at the end, has a whole like a side section, which again, to keep this under 3 hours, the way we've been running recently, I excluded. So if you want to know the whole thing about making whiskey with sake yeasts and sake fungi, there's a whole bit about that in the book.
That script wasn't even that long.
And about how they, how that was almost like apparently the American, I can't remember, at the time it was like the American Whiskey Board were pumping for information about this because they were interested in using it. So American whiskey almost had this process come over as well. Like there's like this small twist of fate that kept it from happening.
We broke out the sodium pentothal and we're just like injecting them, going, tell us the Shubo.
No, it was more of the Japanese chemist, when he was here, when he stopped in California.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Check on see what he could get from wine. And they're like, we know what you're up to.
He had the sodium pentothal going, tell us how we can convert this from Shubo.
Tell us about the sake.
Making shubo complicates the process, but gives distillers more control during fermentation, ensuring a high quality wash. So what I was thinking early
Man,
on in this
I really enjoy a high quality wash, a good pressure, good. Never mind.
what I was thinking earlier on was, you know, distillers, at least when it came to Scotch distilleries, they really didn't care about their yeast flavors at all. Not like the brewers in Germany, who were very guarded with a lot of their yeast strains, and so
They had peat. Like their flavor came from other places.
exactly, they're looking for alcohol, and that's the primary. It's like, oh, okay, I'm not going to, as a home baker, protect my yeast strain that I use because it's all considered a commodity at that point.
Casey, I want you to open up the windows one day at the brewery. Just let wild yeast come in here and just start creating your own strain.
Oh no.
It's
No,
funny
no,
that
no,
you
no,
bring
no.
that up because today we missed it. Urban Artifact was having the Missing Link festival, which is Link was a historic brewery from the 1800s in Cincinnati, and during construction of something down in OTR, one of the original lagering cellars from this brewery was discovered, and Urban Artifact was contacted, and they came and collected yeast samples. No, they were like 100-plus-year-old yeast samples, but they had discovered wooden vats still down. And from what they scraped together, they were able to revive this yeast.
All you need is
And-
one cell.
Yeah, and every year they've now started the Missing Link Festival, in which they reproduce this historic beer.
On the one hand, you said Urban Artifact. I was like, man, I need an antacid just hearing that. On the other, I want that so much.
Not to diminish anything that they've done with this though, but as you are looking, if it was just one or two yeast cells that they were able to get, what you've done is you've basically taken, let's call it the population of the world, 7 billion people, and you've selected one, and you're like, oh, this must be what the entire world looks like.
Mhm.
Because by selecting one out of that entire culture that may or may not represent the entirety of the whole thing, you kind of just like narrow it down. So the
No,
beer,
it's fine. You picked the right one. He's a
Well-
Kwisatz Haderach.
So they're not the only one. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So they hold no rights, or they sold the rights.
oh
They didn't sell. They gave the rights to the city of Cincinnati.
Yeah.
For
No,
what
I'm-
the yeast they found, and they hold the yeast and propagate the yeast. And then for
Right.
the festival, any brewery who wants to make what they think the beer, like if you want to participate and make your own, they'll send you the yeast.
I thought
And you
Casey.
make beer
I-
and send it for the festival.
I thought Casey was talking more about the fact that it's like that one individual random yeast is like cell is not necessarily indicative of every yeast that they use to make that thing.
or that yeast as they were using it is probably a mixture of many different
Magic
genetic
wands
makes
and-
up.
Yeah.
It's all whenever they're not going each time and selecting one cell and propagating it up from one cell like many of the cultures are done today. They're going to be very much a mixture of, okay, here's some yeast, but then there's also in this beer there's also some lactobacillus, there's other things that are there, and so it's not just the one.
I know they didn't
monoculture.
they didn't really have this back then, but man, quality control must have been just a real pain in the dick back then.
Yeah, it's basically you got your taster. Hey, is it good? Yep. Is it not good? Oh well.
Does it taste like what it's supposed to? Close enough. I don't care.
Well,
mean,
I'm half lit anyway.
Yeah. I don't think I think that you were given a lot more leeway back then to be like, oh, it doesn't have to taste the same every single batch.
Look, I guarantee you, if any person drinking back then kept traveled through a time machine to see us drinking now, going, listen, you pretentious pricks, this is not what we're doing this for.
We're doing it because we couldn't drink the water.
Mhm. For 3,000 years.
I mean,
As in Scotland, the term single malt refers to malted whiskey that is made at a single distillery. The age statement on whiskeys indicates the youngest whiskey in the bottle. Unless the label reads single cask, all whiskeys are blends of malt spirits contained in different casks. Whiskeys without age statements are still aged, but often contain younger and older stuff. Blended whiskeys refer to those made by blending whiskeys from different distilleries. In Japan, however, those distilleries are almost always owned by the same company, unlike in Scotland, where whiskeys have traditionally been traded between different makers.
Again, Japan, they like the monopoly.
A single grain whiskey does not refer to a whiskey made from one grain, but rather a grain whiskey made at one distillery.
You got your grains from that, not shared grains.
Yeah, it's a grain whiskey. It's a single whiskey, but they put grain in there because it's also a grain whiskey.
Right,
more or
right.
less.
Sorry, I meant
Yep.
yes. You're not. Yeah, sorry. I was muddying the waters, and I did not intend to.
Yeah, you're good. A single blended whiskey refers to a whiskey comprised of malt and grain whiskeys from a single distillery. In Japan, there are also pure malt whiskeys, which are blends of malt whiskeys from different distilleries. As this being Japan, those distilleries are owned by the same company.
Yeah.
Pure malt was previously used for Scotch, but was banned in 2009. No such stipulation exists in Japan, where the term is still widely used.
It's their whale hunting. Context. Japan is one of the countries left in the world that's like, yeah, no, we're going to hunt whales. So the idea like, yeah, no, we'll also call things pure malt. Why? Just being obstinate at this point.
For grain whiskey, corn is the key ingredient, although other grains such as rye and wheat are also used. Since corn cannot be malted, what?
Not with that attitude.
I'm pretty sure it can. Can it not?
You're,
Maybe it's just
you're
not.
the science guy, man. I don't know.
I thought you could have malted corn. I'll come back to this in a minute. It must be broken down. Oh, okay. So here's what's here. I think here's what's going on here. They're just saying that basically the corn gets cooked, which is what we do in bourbon distilleries as well.
Malting corn requires processing time to facilitate sufficient steeping and germination. So there's more to it than just, just wake it up and let it grow.
Yeah.
And continuing with our Japanese theme from the last episode, it's like, I was going to say, it's like koji, where it's like, the rice doesn't actually make alcohol. We'll get it there.
Right. Yeah. And corn, I mean, it will basically anytime you germinate the seed, you're gonna malt it. That's what it is.
Stopping that sentence midway, and I could see Chris look at me go, I know what you're about to say. I'm glad you stopped.
So you basically cook the corn, it gelatinizes the starches, and then you can then take the resulting liquid that you get from fermenting the alcohol and run it through a steam-filled column still. This will produce an alcohol vapor that is condensed into the spirit. The result is a lighter spirit with a higher alcohol percentage. Japan's biggest makers have 5 grain distilleries, and their grain whiskeys are the backbone of many of the country's most famous blends.
Casey, I don't like how my brain works sometimes, but I think you might at least struggle at this. When I heard the corn gelatinizes, it's like, oh, my brain immediately turned the song Yellow into, and it was corn jello.
Oh, God.
And I just went, God, what is wrong with me?
You can make.
So if you see me on, if you're watching the VOD later, and you just see me just going like my hands in my head, just go like my hands going like, what? Like that is me just going, I don't know what is wrong with my brain that made me do this.
So
I'm not surprised at all.
Here's how you make corn jello. You take corn,
take some bones,
and you milk it or run it through like a
corn has teats.
Oh, blend it. Do a blender.
Will it
blend
blend?
it up.
Yes,
and
Yes, it will.
And then you can use it whole, or you could use the corn juice. How you strain it and use the corn juice? Your choice. Dealer's choice on this one. Add a little bit of sugar and sprinkle in some gelatin, just natural unflavored gelatin, and then you can have a corn jello mold.
There's no way that it did not exist in the 60s.
That's exactly where it came from. I'm pretty sure
everything was jelloed in the 60s. It's like they found this technology and they were like, what else can I jello?
I can confirm this because
I'm expecting a jello mold with a whole corn on the cob inside.
Peas in jello molds were a thing. And so was
I love peas, but meatloaf?
Loaf. Peas in loaf form.
I love peas. I cannot imagine that being good.
There were carrots involved.
That's fine. Peas and carrots, it's a thing.
Today, if you Googled corn jello, you get candy corn jello cups and candy corn jello shots.
That's
not nearly the same.
All candy corn was made in the same batch in 1843. It's not good, and no one should have it. Everyone is wrong every Halloween. All right, let's continue.
There's a thing called corn water, and it's the water after the corn has been boiled in it. It's the water that's left behind, and there are benefits to drinking the corn water.
Oh,
I'm sure there are.
Are those benefits in like? I could hear the quotation marks out of benefits. Yeah. It's like your corn will invest heavily into your 401k.
For the Four Seasons countries, boiled corn water is believed to help cool the body, prevent diarrhea, and increase health in the summer.
Full of it.
No, corn water won't do that. Corn on the cob, yes. Nice buttery corn on the cob. That'll cure what ails you.
Oh, it will.
All right. Speaking of water.
Speaking of corn water.
Japanese whiskey makers love to talk up their water, giving it an almost mythical quality, just like their counterparts in Scotland and the U.S.
Yes. Look, I understand Scotland and the U.S., they're basically the same country.
Same mountain range.
That's what I'm saying. They look at it and go, yeah, no, we have the same like water tablet. It's water table. It's fine. We got this. Japan, you're just overcompensating. And I understand you're not part of that mountain range. You'll get there. Well, you won't get there, but you can. Science will make it work.
Spine of the proto world.
The water near.
Oh, sorry. No, never mind. I was about to go into a weird tangent that we do not have time for.
Nope, we don't.
The water near the Yamazaki distillery in Shimamoto, Osaka, is so delicious that it is considered among the country's best. In Yoichi, locals are quick to offer a glass from the tap to prove just how good the distillery water is, while the Kirin distillery's production water is from Mount Fuji melted snow. Well, filtered through lava. Oh, it gets better. So it's got to be good, right?
How do you filter through lava?
I mean, it's probably it's filtered through the porous rock after the lava's cooled.
Okay, or it's the condensation that like they pour it over, then they get whatever comes to the top. But it's just a.
I'm willing to bet it's just like it's filtered through pumice.
Yeah, probably.
Pumice
stones.
Soft water is most common in Japan, and no limestone shelf.
Yeah, I was going to say, sucks, don't it? Just can't get that limestone in your life.
And it best suits natural Japanese food like rice and fish, says Shiyoshi Sano, who joined Suntory in 1971 until 2016. Participated in the Suntory National Water Forest Program, of course.
Can you just picture a Japanese man with like a popped collar, like wide collar, like leisure suit kind of jacket? When you hear like in 1971, I'm just picturing disco and like a leisure suit.
Speaking of that,
in Japan.
I didn't leave it in, but Takatsuru on all of his stuff, he wore a like neck to toe white chemist's coat, lab coat, everywhere for all that. So, like, the entire time he was in Scotland, everything, and then like every picture he's wearing it. He refused to not wear one.
That's what it got him his wife.
I don't know.
I don't. I'm just assuming. Look, maybe if I wore a head to toe, a neck to toe, a lab coat, I'd be married right now. But we'll never know.
You could.
Because it's a fashion choice.
I don't know what to do right now.
Start going on dates with like a full lab coat and just see what happens.
I don't know. They could be like, ooh, a scientist.
Yeah, and they'll get very disappointed that it's in fact a historian.
Touche.
All right, Casey, let's keep going because I'm a monster and I keep dragging this on.
So, according to Sano, hard water, such as those found in France, goes best with Western food, especially meat and bread. Japanese whiskey is often highly aromatic and floral. Even those with high phenolic levels often seem as smoky as the peat monsters coming out of Scotland.
Real quick, there's food other than meat and bread. The only thing I can think of is potatoes. Are there other things that you eat?
Some of us eat vegetables. It's weird.
No, that's rabbit. That's what meat eats.
That's what meat eats. I eventually get those nutrients. It just is filtered through the other animals.
Filtered through that cow I'm eating raw.
You're giving me the food that my food eats.
This is the John Panette thing. He's like, salad isn't a meal. He's like, the salad is a promise that good things are coming.
That food's coming. It's like, when I see a salad, my brain tells me, stay right here. Food's coming.
All right.
Casey, I'm sorry you always are at the end where like we are at our drunkest, just trying to let you get through a section.
It doesn't
He's trying to be
happen.
super serious. He's like, guys, we got some real science to talk about here, and we're all drunk making like second grader jokes.
This is my bread and butter. I love the science.
You love the science, and you just have to sit there and tolerate the rest of us just going,
We're giggling like,
"Ooh, ooh." He said, "But."
It's like, no, it's the Billy Madison thing. He called the shit a poop.
Oh, my kids do not need to watch that movie.
If peeing your pants is cool, you just call me Miles Davis.
No, it's not. All right, again, we're off. I saw it was a whatever Facebook trying to get on the short form videos. That was what is showing Chris Farley from that movie specifically as the bus driver, and when he's like red faced and goes off and all, and they're like, Chris Farley would he would down whole cups of coffee between takes to keep his manic energy. And I was like, yeah, that's what he was doing to keep his manic.
Yeah,
Coffee,
was not
sure.
speedballs.
Yeah, it
Certainly not.
Wasn't all the coke.
Like, look, John Mulaney is like high on coke all the time.
Was he's cleaned up.
He's clean now. He had been clean before. He relapsed, and it's a fine thing. But I was like watching clips of his like old stand. I was like, how did we not realize
That man was high on coke?
that the energy he brought during those shows, like, no, that's someone who is like evening out to a level just above where he naturally rests.
You know, he's got a new special on.
He does. It's
Yeah.
good. It's fun.
Oh, you already watched.
I did.
Of course he did.
It's a stand-up comedy special. Of course, I was going to go try and watch it.
Yeah.
I really want to watch it.
It's fun. I don't have kids. I can do whatever I want,
You can.
Sorry. I realized like mid-sentence, like, what am I
Much?
doing?
Magic Claw has no children. His days are free and easy.
Casey, get us out of this Keep us going to actual topics.
Nope. You're on your own. You got yourself here.
I did. It's my fault, and I accept that.
So the different yeasts in Japan might have something to do with the water aroma and flavor and all that. The even high phenolic levels that often seem as smoky as the peat monsters coming out of Scotland. But Centauri chief blender Shinji Fukuyu.
Fukuyo.
Shinji Fukuyo. Or Fukuyo.
Fukuyo. So there was like
And
one
you
bit of
too.
Japanese pronunciation that I had ever heard. That was the tip that I try to remember when I'm doing it. Is like, you more or less pronounce every syllable. You just kind of some things you'll kind of have to shorten. But like in that case, I'm like, yeah, Shinji Fukuyo. Yeah, that seems right.
It only
Yeah.
gets tricky at the end of some words.
It's tricky in some words, and it gets tricky with a TS.
Yeah,
He-
It's a s.
He thinks that the reason that you've got the peatiness could be Yamazaki's water. That delicate softness, Centauri believes, results in a whiskey that pleases the Japanese palate.
It is bizarre. Like they are going for like they grow out of a Scotch land, but Japanese whiskey will taste like an earth fruit, like a date fruit kind of flavor in there for a lot. Like at least look at the Centauri stuff that I've had.
Mm.
And I'm just like, you come from the same place. How are you come from like the same like idea? How are you so different? It's like, water and yeast essentially at that point.
Interesting.
Sorry.
Well, when talking about distillation, for malt whiskey, distillation is done twice in pot stills. You do it the first time, you get your high wine. After you get your high wine, you distill it again, and you get your actual liquor at the end of the process. It kind of boosts it each time because pot stills are less efficient. Japanese distilleries use a range of techniques when distilling, from direct to indirect heating of the stills. The Yochi Distillery is the only place in the world that still fires its pots the traditional way with coal. Nika, Centauri, Humbo Mars, and Kirin use made in Japan stills from the Miyake Industries. Is that the same? That's not the one that has the department store in Disney, is it?
I have no earthly idea.
I'm pretty sure it is because remember how we were talking about that whole, there's no breaking up huge conglomerate companies in Japan.
Yeah. Fair. They look. You do one thing, you do it well.
And then you're allowed to do everything else.
Japan does not have like a low setting. You just crank that up to 11. That's where you live.
Well, it previously manufactured stills for Hanyu Distillery. Today, small-scale distilleries such as Chichibu and Kishi, however, import stills directly from Scotland, explaining that such stills still better suit their needs.
Brittany, how much would you love to see a Japanese small batch distillery called Chibi?
So cute.
Right? That's what I'm saying. It would be fantastic.
I picture nobody uses a tanuki as their mascot.
There should be a Japanese small batch thing that's tanuki. There's nothing more Japanese. Well, okay. Tanukis exist in basically East Asia, but still, I didn't realize it was a creature until someone explained to me what Mario 3's, raccoon form was, and it was not, in fact, a raccoon.
No, there is a raccoon.
There's a raccoon, and then there's the tanuki one.
Mario 3.
Yep.
Yeah, there is a raccoon.
That's the raccoon
suit,
one.
And there is a tanuki suit. Tanuki's the full-on bear-looking costume with a raccoon tail.
I thought they were one and the same.
The raccoon one is when it's just the raccoon tail, and he has little ears.
Does okay? Now I have to look up. Does Japan actually have raccoons, or they only have?
I think they have both.
Yeah. They have raccoons, but the one is a mythological creature.
No, it doesn't.
No, tanukis
But it
exist.
Tanukis exist. They are heavy in mythology, though. Like they are. There's a lot of mythology around them.
Oh, raccoons are a non-native species to Japan. They're an
Ah,
invasive species that someone has brought over. But the tanuki, which is the Japanese raccoon dog,
Yeah. Which
that
looks like it.
I say I just had to be like, it's real, and then look at no, it's real. It looks
Yeah. It's adorable.
it looks like a fat raccoon. That's really what it looks
It's
like.
it's a fat raccoon bear dog.
Yeah. Okay.
man, bear, pig.
Yeah.
Raccoons have really only been in Japan since the 1970s.
Somehow America is to blame for that. I don't know how,
Oh yeah.
but
Because
there's a
we came in with our gunboat diplomacy again. Said, look, we've got too many of these things. We've got to unload some.
we came in with gunboat diplomacy to radically alter their entire government and culture.
Here, have a trash panda.
We dropped nuclear bombs on them. And then afterwards we went, here's a raccoon. Do with it what you will.
So, not the white man's fault. Comes from
Casey. I've studied a lot of history. That sentence doesn't exist.
Well,
it comes from a 1963 biographical novel that then gets turned into an animated series by Nippon Animation about a raccoon called Rascal the Raccoon. People in Japan liked it. They liked the raccoon and then started importing them. And then they got raccoons in Japan.
It's their version of like the weird exotic pet. I was gonna say, yeah, okay, sure. I was gonna say like the weird exotic pet people who are like, oh, look at my like
python.
Yeah, it was like 4,000-foot python that I have in my.
And then it gets loose, or they turn it loose because they can't take care of it anymore. And then lo and behold, they now have an invasive species.
An invasive species in Florida of Python Man. Happened because someone in Florida decided to interbreed with a python.
It would happen.
Moving on.
Japan suffers an estimated 30 billion yen annually from the effects in the agricultural sector alone.
They just need to train their raccoons to eat only garbage like we have here in the States.
80% of the temples in Japan have been damaged by raccoons.
Oh my gosh.
Good Lord.
Yeah, F those guys.
Those temples do not have the long, rich tradition that you expect them to have. Most of them are only from like the
1100s.
Yeah.
There are some, yes. A lot of them, not as much as you think.
The one they quote here is a 900-year-old temple. But
sorry, part of that gripe is just that Shintoism is not. It is an ancient religion, but it is not like the way it existed in Japan for a period of time. Is not. It became a state religion because they went, we can find a way to make this useful. So, anyway, let's get back to the episode so we can wrap this up before Brittany kills us.
Oh, this is going to happen.
One of these days.
Both Suntory and Nikka both produce high-quality grain whiskeys with each of their column stills, which are towering structures that may not be pretty, but are workhorses, churning out continuous flows of distillate. The Kirin Distillery is in a league of its own in Japan, having a total of 3 different methods on site for grain whiskey.
There's no crying and distilling.
Multi-column stills to make a light spirit, column stills and a kettle to make a medium-style spirit, and a beer column. Column stills and a kettle to make a medium-style spirit, and a beer column and a doubler to make heavy bourbon-style spirits. The 2 last distillation setups are unique among Japanese distilleries.
All right.
Delicious. Look, a lot of that, it's like, I think anytime, like, we need to restate many of these things constantly when we talk about whiskey. Like, yeah, we need to re-talk about the malt, like single malt, what's that mean, and all this.
A consumable style of whiskey. The only one I can actually think of is 51% corn, aged in fresh charred oak barrels.
From a distillery predating Prohibition.
in Kentucky. And Japan agrees because they bought them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much.
They were like, "Ooh, yes, that one."
Them or Louisiana.
Look, the people you were talking about in this earlier in the episode, they're like, "Oh yeah, they like whiskey's going to be the new thing in Japan." It was. They were probably about 30 years ahead of their time, but they were correct.
Yeah.
You know who else has peat? I'm looking at a map of peat deposits around the world.
Kentucky.
Large deposits of peat in the Congo.
Yeah, because you need a humid climate.
Oh.
Are we sure we don't have peat in Kentucky? Because it can get humid.
No peat in Kentucky. You do have it along the East Coast coastline, though.
No.
It needs to be really humid, and you needed ancient, bogs, swamps.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's fine. But also, you said East Coast. I was like, no, that's like Carolinas.
You need flat land to some for some extent, because
Yeah,
otherwise you get runoff and you get drainage that way.
that's true. But also,
We're screwed.
flatland is just
Indiana.
flatland is the devil's plaything.
It is. Damn Flatlanders.
And Kansas.
Speaking of drainage, let's talk about what we're drinking.
Sparkling Muscatel, one of the finest wines of Idaho. Would you taste it for us, please? Ooh. Excellent choice. Should be for 95 cents.
I believe that's the only time we didn't talk over it.
I Miss Piggy's thing at the end is like maybe my favorite part. She just agrees, like, "Oh yes, that's a good, well done."
Oh man, every bit of Steve Martin in that is just gold.
Would you care to smell the cap? Oh.
We finally have Hulu now. We really need to watch that show. The Only Murders in the Building.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that show.
Yeah, Steve
Steve
Martin
Martin.
and
Martin
Steve
Short.
Martin and Martin Short, best friend Martin Short, and Selena Gomez, who they both went. This girl has comedy chops you are not appreciating.
I love Selena Gomez.
I have no context for her other than Steve Martin and Martin Short approve, and I'm like, good enough for me. Well done, ma'am.
Well, you know what I have context for? This
What you're drinking? What do you got?
Hibiki, Japanese Harmony Suntory whiskey. I'm pretty sure.
Oh,
it's,
darndest thing that.
Yeah, about that. It's a 43% alcohol by volume, 86 proof, and delicious. Obviously from Suntory. I gotta say, because honestly, finding Nika stuff is getting harder and harder. And this is, I still hate it. This was the first batch after they dropped age statement. I'm just like, ah.
Yeah, I don't actually know how old. I don't know if I got that like the same year or like the year after, but it's within a couple of years of them dropping the age statement. Because
It's still delicious. Like, it's smooth. You can taste the light peatiness. It's like, I put it akin to, I put it a notch up from introductory Scotch, but it's so smooth that it still gives you all the Scotch elements, but it's so smooth, and I hesitate to say crushable.
I think
no.
Crushable.
I think of it as having like a hard, like an earth fruit flavor, like a stone fruit, like a date or something that you could pick up a little bit of notes of that in there.
Yeah, I can see that. It's
I say that because that's also what I was drinking.
you get the little character of iodine, like that's in there.
Yeah. Brittany, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I love that stuff.
Super taster.
Well, okay, yeah. when I
What
opened the bottle-
what soup can does it taste like?
So when I opened the bottle,
It's a chunky New England clam chowder.
I was about to say it tastes like a New England clam chowder.
I smelled bananas when I opened the bottle.
Okay, yeah, I could
You could go that way.
I could see how you get there. I used up
I-
the last of mine, by the way. I've been hanging on that
saw,
stuff for
yeah.
I've been hanging on that stuff for years.
I mean,
It's-
yeah, it's been we've had the same bottle for quite some time now.
Yeah, if you go back to the Suntory episode, same bottle.
But,
yeah,
As
same
soon as I
bottle.
opened it, I was like, "Am I crazy or is this bananas?"
I was
This shit is bananas.
Bananas.
Yeah.
It's the only time I'll allow a reference to that song because that song is otherwise garbage.
Oh, I hate all of her.
GABARGE.
Look, she's great, no doubt, because there are other voices and other musics to kind of like go in. But
Because you had a genius songwriter write all the songs, and then
Yeah.
he quit the band to go write for The Simpsons.
As you do.
as you do, you either quit to go join them or you leave them to go host late night.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, no, that's also what I had. It was delicious. It's gone. I finished it hours ago. And may have just broken into Buffalo Trace because I needed some more whiskey.
Which is so. When Brittany's boss goes, they were talking about her bringing back some of this like instant coffee that their company makes that's only available in Japan.
The best
And-
part of waking up.
But I was like, she was like, I was thinking about asking her if she could get, look for some of the like Yamazaki to bring back. I was like, hell, ask her to bring back some of the bourbon that we make that isn't available here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
some of the like gold Blantons.
Yeah. Some of the stuff
Because-
that's available in like, dollar stores over there, but we can't get it here to save our lives.
Cobbler's children have no shoes.
Yeah. Kentucky's children have no bourbon. That's a lie. We have plenty of great bourbon. They're slowly taking it away from us. I'm looking at you, Heaven Hill, getting rid of your green label. Sons of bitches.
Yep.
I mean, I've got my private stash of green label. Don't get me wrong. And if you want some of it, you can kick rocks because that's daddy's.
You go pound sand.
There's nothing special about it other than they're like, this is just for Kentucky.
That's special enough. Really.
All right.
Okay.
Casey.
I
Yeah.
have enjoyed a bubbly watermelon flavor. Been trying to
The buble.
de buble. Been trying to cut back on my alcohol consumption significantly, and so I have a buble paired with a Heineken 0.0, which is actually better tasting than the regular Heineken.
Mm-hmm. That tracks.
And so yeah, those two are my drinks for the evening.
Guys,
The watermelon
I
was pretty good.
feel like we should around just after November start drinking more buble.
Oh, I mean that's the typical.
It's the time of year that Bublé has come out of his cave to regale us with his songs.
It's so wonderful that he leans into all it's.
He does, but he also is aware like other people like troll him with that, and he is just like, I hate you people, but also I like money.
Well, and he's had enough. After what he's gone through, he's had a sense of humor. So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah.
The best thing Michael Bublé has done is the Ham and Bubbly bit from SNL where they're both on. No one else knows what I'm talking about.
Watch SNL.
I haven't watched SNL in 20 years.
This is a clip that got recommended to me at some point. This is like 10 years old at this point. Because just John Hamm is like guest hosting. I'll bring it to you later. Look up Ham and Bublé if you're listening to this. You know,
I need them
listeners
to
find
together.
that. It's great. It's Michael Bublé singing "Calls for Help" as John Hamm has him trapped in a restaurant he does not believe in, where they serve champagne and flutes with chunks of ham in it.
Oh, God.
Oh my god.
Cause it's bubbly and ham.
I'm gonna die.
All right. Then.
Oh,
All right then.
delightful.
yeah.
Well, today's show was written by none other than the meat popsicle, Chris
It's
Walker.
a hairy meat popsicle.
Yeah, you don't want to drop that one on the floor.
Yeah, man has hair on top of his head, bottom of his head, and the rest of his body.
Hairiest ass you've ever seen.
I'm just saying, I wish I had at least the top of the head.
No, you don't. I took a shower today and had to clean the drain twice while in the shower.
Chris,
and clogged right up.
never mind. You know what? I don't have to go to a barber anymore. You're right. I don't. I'm not envious anymore. I don't have to engage in small talk with someone who's trying to get their tip.
I hate small talk. He used sources such as Japanese Whiskey by Brian Ashcroft. Maybe singular source.
Yeah, singular source, great source. You need to go read that book if you're interested in Japanese whiskey at all. He's a former Kotaku writer, so it is a very fun read.
Interesting that someone from Kotaku wrote something good.
Yeah, I mean the writing of recent is kind of crap, and I don't think he writes for them anymore. So
No, like the last like 4 or 5, last 5 or 6 years, I have just been like infuriated when I read something like, God, this is some.
I'm pretty sure he's one of their like back in one of their
Back in
heyday
the day.
writers
Yeah.
when they actually put out quality content.
Right.
Well, if you want some quality content, you can subscribe and get some great resources at haveadrinkshow.com or follow us at Have a Drink Show on social media and twitch.tv.
We've actually thought about, we discussed earlier, we need to get the list on our Amazon page updated on the resources. So
Yeah.
we get this one added to it. We
Get-
make it, you could make your own little drinks library by visiting.
Get them books. Doesn't help us at all. Get them books. They're good reading. Also, you can tell us your favorite drink, ask a question, or just leave some general feedback. Use the email address feedback@haveadrinkshow.com. Use the feedback page on the website, or you can look deep in yourself. Do some personal introspection. Figure out what is the best way to do your life. Figure out what is correct, what is right for you, and then only then concentrate deeply on what you want us to know, what you want us to think about, and we'll know. We're there with you. We understand.
Import some peat and smoke that and use
Also that'll do it too. You summon the peat and we're like, yeah, we're there.
All joking fun aside, I'd like to remind everyone to please drink responsibly.
Yeah. I was like, how far are we going, Bob?
I didn't know until I started talking. I don't know any time until I start talking.
Fair enough.
It's scary.
Sometimes
All
I care,
right.
sometimes I don't.
So check us out another couple of weeks for the next episode. And remember to check out the store, haveadrinkstore.com. I've actually started updating that maybe when we were in the show.
Get some water bottles.
Where we also have the new sticker for Year of Sake 2023.
It's a good sticker.
So anyway, once again, I'm Brittany Lee Walker.
I'm Justin Frazier.
I'm Christopher Walker.
And I'm Casey Price. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Failed. Show's long.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.